there was no way that I was going to get any licensing for women's sports, because obviously it was still taboo. But I went to a lawyer. Where there's a will, there's a way. And he said, you can get a license under the Ministry of Commerce and under the Chamber of Commerce. And that's how I was able to start up a sports company, yet that functioned as a sports club or a sports academy.
Richard, today we have an awesome interview with Lina Almaeena. Lina spent well over a decade leading the charge for women's sports in Saudi Arabia, and she was a pioneer in advocating for the benefits of sports, not just for women, but for everyone. In 2006, Lina co-founded Jeddah United, one of the leading sports companies in Saudi Arabia. In 2014, Forbes listed her as one of the most powerful women in the Arab world. Richard, this was fun.
I think our listeners on the podcast, our viewers on the YouTube video will really enjoy this. This is, Lina is authentic, genuine, sincere, enthusiastic about what she's doing. And you mentioned that 10 years, she's still a champion for women's participation in sports. But I think she also, and this will come through in the discussion. She's just finishing a term as a member of the Majlis Shura, which is she served there as well, sort of taking a hiatus from helping lead the Jeddah United Sports Club. Lina is remarkable. Now, she would resist that description because she's a humble person. But I would also agree with her, because I think her point is, all right, whatever you think of me, and I think she's remarkable. I think when you listen to this and watch this, you'll think she's remarkable. The important thing to remember, she's not unique. And by that, I mean, and you and I, Lucian, we've met any number of Saudi women who evince and embody the same characteristics as Lina in terms of a real commitment, not only to her family and her career, but a keen awareness of what their role is and how they can contribute to women in terms of their progress in Saudi Arabia. And also they see that part and parcel with the larger progress in Saudi Arabia. So what will come through in this interview, I think, this discussion, is not only all that she's done and all that she's doing, but where she feels that fits into her role as a citizen of Saudi Arabia, and how deeply she takes that, deeply important she thinks that role is. And I think it's something that we often see. I mean, I think as Americans, we forget that we all have a responsibility to be good citizens. I think in a young country, and Saudi Arabia is a young country, the Saudis feel it very closely. We have to represent, we have to commit, we have to be solid citizens, because we're all sort of pushing in the same direction. And that comes through strongly with Lina. So like I said, I think we can all agree she's remarkable. She won't accept that, but she's not unique. There's a lot of women in Saudi Arabia like her, even as remarkable as she is. So I just think this will be a very interesting discussion for our listeners and our viewers.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's get to it. Here's our conversation with Lina Almaeena.
Your love of sports, when did that begin?
So I want to say that my love of sports started at a very, I would say I remember me playing soccer with my father, playing, I would say in school as well. So on several different levels. So from a family perspective, sports was a big part of our entertainment on our weekend activities. So that was for sure an integral part of how it, came about. Also, having been in a private Saudi school, I definitely was exposed to a lot of programs. So all the schools that I went to in Saudi Arabia, even in the 80s and in the 90s, definitely did have PE in it, which is of course minority of schools. But basketball was actually the number one sport in these private schools, because it's just easier to facilitate basketball versus football in terms of the fields and so forth. So also, I have to add that being also exposed because my father was in the media, he got to see a lot of the all the celebrities who did come to the kingdom, and a lot of them were sports champions and sports figures like Muhammad Ali Clay. I remember when he came to the kingdom, and my father hosted him, and me as a kid, meeting Muhammad Ali Clay, the greatest, was a big deal. And I really think these type of encounters, along with Imran Khan, today's Pakistan's prime minister, but also the world champion in cricket, had a lot to do with my love and passion for sports, and even my career in sports in the future.
You ended up going abroad to college. How'd you end up at the University of New Mexico?
So my cousins are half American. So my uncle is married to an American. So my aunt is American, basically. And she, even though she's from Huntington Beach, California, her sister bought a ranch in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And when my cousins graduated, we're all the same age, and we graduated from high school around the same time, and they were going. So my uncle actually said, you're one of my daughters. I want you to go, and with his wife and my younger cousin. So we all actually, I went from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia in 1995 to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, at a time where there was hardly any direct flights, even from JFK. But it was a great experience. It was fantastic. But I wasn't alone. I was amongst family. So,
right.
And I got to also continue my passion in basketball. I signed up for a class in basketball at the university. It was a accredited class, so that was ideal for me. But yeah, I just want to say that I remember once I was interviewed on CNN, and the assumption was that, the Lina learned basketball in the US, but in reality, I had already, started playing at a very young age. You're talking about elementary level. And I was captain of my intermediate and high school teams here in Saudi Arabia, learned from Saudi coaches. And my uncle Tariq actually was my first coach. We had hoops in our garages. So that's what we did on the weekends, and I just continued this passion, I guess.
So what would you say is your best attribute in terms of basketball? As you know, we Lucia and I played as well. And so,
I used to be a really good three-point shooter. I was a center, and now I play social basketball.
Sure.
So I'm not really big on where I'm placed, on whether I'm a 1 or a 5. It really doesn't matter at this point. I prefer 3-on-3 today, but it's all good.
Then you came back east to George Mason, where actually Lucian earned his master's, and you were studying communications?
I sure did. I studied communication with a minor in French. And ironically, when I first moved to the US in 95, I was actually a political science major. But then I was thinking in terms of work-wise, what are the opportunities at that time for a political science major for women? And I actually transferred to communications. And, who would have thought later on in life that I would venture into politics? But yeah, so I did communications and French minor.
And you finished up at AU in the UK, right? American University?
For my master's, I did
Right.
a psychology and specialized in women's psychology at the American University in London.
So
Correct.
you're set up, communications, psychology, for whatever. You come back and you've always been a champion for women's sports. And we'll get to this later. Women's sports is now a priority for the kingdom as a result of Vision 2030. But you were very early on this. And in 2006, you set up Jeddah United Sports Club. Can you tell us about that? The motivation, how you built it, major challenges, major successes. We'd love to hear about that.
So I want to say that it was really a social and entrepreneurship initiative. When I started the team, it was because I was going through, I just, given birth to my daughter, and I was going through a lot of, I would say postpartum depression. There was hardly any opportunities for me to leave for nurseries in the kingdom at that time. My mother was a working grandmother, so I didn't have that option of leaving my, newborn with. And I just was, I waited until basically my husband would come back from work, and I restarted the team. He actually said he played basketball with the guys, and he was like, there's a family court. Why don't you just call your friends from high school and go play basketball? And to be honest with you, that first practice I had, and I will tell you that it was in March of 2003.
Wow.
That changed my world. It just, my psyche, from 180 degrees, from feeling very stressed, low, depressed, whatever negative emotions that I was going through at the time. I would say in exactly 90 minutes, I was on cloud nine. I just felt so energetic, so ecstatic. And I was like, wow, I forgot that feeling. And, and I just felt like, wow, that's how I felt like I was 17 again. And it was really at that point, even though I obviously didn't realize that I was going to start a company that night, but that night I knew that this is something that I was never going to stop. And it took me 3 years when my mother came up to me and said, when are you going to get a job? My mother is a working mother. She believes in, you have to be a good citizen and an effective citizen. And you can combine being a good mother and being productive in society. And she raised 5 kids working as a radio journalist at the Ministry of Information at the time. She was one of the first TV, she read the news on Saudi TV for a while. And I remember watching my mother as a really young girl, watching my mother read the news in the 70s, like in the late 70s. And I was like, yeah, that's right. It's not a choice for me. I can't just sit at home, and it's not an excuse. My daughter's 3, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the turning point where we found a loophole. There was no way that I was going to get any licensing for women's sports, because obviously it was still taboo. But I could easily get not easily, but I went to a lawyer. Where there's a will, there's a way. And he said, you can get a license under the Ministry of Commerce and under the Chamber of Commerce. And that's how I was able to start up a sports company, yet that functioned as a sports club or a sports academy.
So you did a loophole through the Council of Saudi Chambers at the time, and you set up the Jeddah United. And where did it go from there? Was it a great response? Was there terrific interest?
So we grew from, I don't know, 8 women or 10 women to 500 plus sports academy that catered to women and youth, because a lot of these women had kids, they had siblings, they had brothers, they had sisters. So we grew into really an academy, and we weren't able to cater to all the demand and the requests of people in Jeddah that wanted to enroll in basketball specifically as a team sport. And especially at a time where there was hardly any entertainment, there were no, movie theaters, not that many activities, especially sports activities. So there was a lot of interest, and we weren't able to cater to that demand. So we had to expand, because we felt like it's not just about Jeddah, it's about the kingdom as a whole. So we opened a branch in 2010. So 4 years later in the Eastern Province, in Riyadh in 2011, because we wanted this to be a national campaign. And we had international goals as well. And our main international goal was to change stereotypes of Saudi women around the world. So we traveled the world, really, from Malaysia to the east to all the way to the United States and the West, going through
competing, right?
friendly games, but like
Yeah.
friendly competitions. Yes,
Yeah.
let's put it this way. Yeah. They weren't tournaments; they were just friendly games. But the objective behind it was to, of course, to learn and to advance and to gain experience. But really, in my heart, it was to just change stereotypes of Saudi women across the globe.
So this is 06, founded in 06. You expanded to the Eastern Province and in Riyadh, 2011.
Correct.
And what kind of headwinds in terms of just operational? I mean, running a business is tough full time, especially when you're doing it, trying to do it on a global level.
Right.
What were your biggest challenges in terms of the company?
Human capital. I mean, you're talking about like there was no professionals in sports, female professionals in sports, at least on a local levels. But we were lucky because they were international. Whether they were foreigners married to Saudis or just foreigners who are working in Saudi in different schools as teachers or in schools and universities. So we were able to, find that type of quality, like high level quality from all over the world, from Arab countries like Syria and from France and Europe, American coaches. And that's how we were able to, maintain our academy throughout, the past 15 years.
That's great. That's your own little basketball technology transfer, because they're bringing in their skills and their coaching philosophies.
100%.
I'm really interested in how your businesses were impacted by the coronavirus, because it's such a social enterprise and it's children. Could you talk a little bit about that? Like when you found out about the coronavirus and how you managed it, and it looks like everything's back, but
it's risky because it's a contact sport, obviously. And especially we went by the rules of the Ministry of Sports. So when we shut down for an X number of months, but then obviously we followed the rules of the ministry. So you also have to look at it from another perspective, which is the immunity perspective. And this is huge. So yes, you wanted to be safe, yet it's very important for your immunity to play sports and exercise and have that physical activity component if you wanted to fight COVID. So it was kind of like, what's the word? It was a big, it was the struggle basically between, being safe on one hand, but exercising and the importance of exercising on another, to basically be strong enough to fight COVID, etc. And we managed. We're so lucky. I mean, Saudi Arabia is one of I think the second most advanced country in terms of the world, in terms of how it dealt with COVID. And we were very lucky. The nation was very much abiding to all the rules and the regulations. And when you also look at it, I want to say that 70% of the frontliners globally were women. And this was huge because the women globally had a lot to do with how to fight COVID and how to, it was just, like I said, it was tough times. But one thing I think for me, one of the most important lessons that we learned as a universe is that it was one of the most uniting times of our lives across the globe. We were all united, regardless of, race, religion, gender, ethnicity, etc. And we felt like we had we're fighting the same enemy, worried about the same, had same concerns, wishing for the same, situation and so forth. So I think this is also one of the blessings of COVID. And I just wish for a safe world, just like anyone else.
Yeah, interesting. So I don't want to leave Jeddah United because it's a business, and that's what I find really interesting. But you were named to the Majlis Shura in 2016. For listeners, this is the Consultative Assembly in Saudi Arabia, 150 members by mandate, 30 of them are women. This was, since it was established, I think this was the third sort of group to go through. Is that correct? Second. All right. Was this a surprise?
Absolutely. If you ask me what was the, unexpected, really, appointment that ever happened to you, I would say definitely the Shoura Council. So on April 25th, 2016, Vision 2030 was announced. And that was, I don't want to say music to my ears is not even the word. It was one of the most, a turning point in my career life, because I felt like women's sports, now we're talking about increasing participation from 13% to 40%, but it's not gender related. So we're talking about both genders. It's for everyone. So I felt like everything that I was doing in the past decade was what crystallized on that day, on the 25th of April. 8 months later or so, I was appointed in the Shoura Council. You can imagine how it wasn't about me. It was about women's sports and how it is part of the country's objectives, not from only obviously a sports perspective, but you're talking about from an economic, from a social, from a health perspective, because there was a lot of things going on. There was how many billions of Saudi riyals being spent on treating diseases due to the fact of lack of movement. So it just really made sense, even from a point of, having continued my master's in psychology. Also the fact that how it is an amazing way of just feeling good about yourself. We talk about the pillar of vibrant society,
right?
How happiness, the happiness pillar that you need to, that we want to make sure that the citizens and the residents of Saudi Arabia are just happy and enjoying, quality of life. So for me, that's what I was doing.
Can I take a moment to give a shout out to your mom and your dad?
For sure.
As you know, I've been involved in Saudi Arabia for a long time. There was your mom, Summer Fatani, and your dad, Khalil Almaenna, are members of a really special and unique group of Saudi patriots, I call them, called the Committee for International Trade, which is part of the Council of Saudi Chambers in the past, now the Federation of Saudi Chambers. This group was started in the 80s by Salman and some really, really influential Saudis for the purpose of taking private sector individuals, best and the brightest, men and women, to help with external trade relations. So these were volunteer private sector Saudis who were invited to join this Committee for International Trade, and on their own coin, on their own initiative, go out and engage with the world. And so I've worked with Committee for International Trade, CIT, for decades, and they've done things that nobody else has done. And this started, again, this started way back when. It was reinvigorated after 9/11. But so they were doing outreaches, they're doing major trade delegations, any number of things. But I got to know your mom through this. And your mom, along with women like Thraya Al-Rayed and Dr. Salwa Hazza, two women who preceded you as members of the Shura Council, they would come on delegations. And I would never forewarn people, we're talking with the World Affairs Council or some civic society. I would never forewarn them on what they were going to see. And people would just walk away bewildered, because these women were strong, they were intelligent, dignified, articulate, and people would just, wait a second, this doesn't fit any preconception. And they were just a special group of, CIT is a special group, but these women were particularly outstanding. And so that's my shout out. I apologize, but I'm not surprised you're where you are, because I know your mom, and she's a really impressive human being.
Thank you very much. I really thank you for your kind words. And I have to say that that's we always felt like we were always responsible for any delegation that, well, they were responsible when any delegation, any visitor, any tourist came to the country at a time where, we didn't have tourist visas, but they always liked to greet them. They always had a lot of all these, even with different embassies, welcome the new, when Jeddah Consul Generals. And I remember even a lot of the media figures like Barbara Walters, I remember meeting her when she came to Saudi Arabia. So they always felt like they wanted, especially in the light that there were so many misconceptions, Saudi Arabia being one of the most stereotyped countries in the world, pre-vision, of course, 2030, they felt like it was their responsibility as media, journalists to give the true, at least their point of view of a lot of, different segments of Saudi society. And I guess that's where I got it from.
Called off to serve your country as a member of the Shura. How'd you spend your time with the Shura? What were your committees, your focus, your priorities?
Right. So as much as I was honored, I was very humbled at the same time, and I felt very responsible. And as also a writer, I felt like, it's my opportunity to, obviously, we are the voice of the people. And specifically, obviously, for women, both genders, but for women specifically, the things that were not options for them now are. And I remember the first 2 years I was in the health committee. Obviously, you talk about, psyche. And so that was also important from a mental perspective and a health perspective, and emotional health. So I tried to focus on that. And it's obviously a relationship to sports, but I pushed for one of my recommendations. One of my first recommendations was to integrate PE in government schools. Just because I was in a private school doesn't mean that you don't think about the majority. And even though the vision was announced, but still you need to push for these recommendations to just fasten the pace, basically. It was coming, but we just kind of pushed for it. And I remember 24 hours after the recommendation was discussed under the dome in the Shoura Council, the Minister of Education announced the integration of PE in government schools. So to me, that was one of the biggest. Obviously, there were a lot of other things that we proposed, but I remember that vividly because it was just so amazing that it was just 24 hours later. And obviously, a lot of things, we pushed because I had an issue finding qualified coaches. So I also had another recommendation regarding opening up sports science department, whether departments or colleges in the female, whether the universities in general. And so that also, unfolded. Eventually it unfolded. Some were directly from the council, but some were just a natural, let's say, transformation. And I think everybody plays a role in society. I think the media has a lot to do with the Shoura Council, of course, NGOs, just citizens as a whole. It's a responsibility of every different person, regardless of where they are, to take part in this transformation and to contribute in their, with whatever they can. So, recycling, I'm very green. So I remember I had a few different recommendations in terms of trying to use biodegradable plastics and just kind of ban this plastic that's just, what happens in the shores of California will affect the Red Sea. And it's very important to be responsible globally also. Committees, like I said, I was between health committees, in the environment committee, and the social affairs committee. So this social affairs sports committee was also the last committee that I was in. I was also obviously a member of the parliamentary friendship group. So we traveled the world and went to different parliaments, Switzerland, Pakistan, the East. Also, I was in other countries, Morocco, with the aim of, just building bridges between the.
As a member of the Majlis, they want you your focus to be there, to really be on those, your commitments and your responsibilities as a member of the Majlis. which of course, obviously took you away from Jeddah United. So your term has ended, and you're now going back. What awaits you? What are your plans? I'm sure you're excited to be back into this.
So in the 4 years, I just want to say that, for the women, especially the commuters. I mean, there are a lot of men and women, obviously, who commute, but yes, it was not easy. It was 4 years, and I hope that, how do I put it? So basically from 2016 to 2020, which is my 4-year term, it was, in my opinion, the most crucial term for women, because it just followed the announcement of Vision 2030. It was the transformation, years. And that's where the bulk of the empowerment, policies and rules and the regulations basically were being formed. So that was really special. And I felt so, I felt like I was on a mission in all these 4 years, having been, you have to travel, you leave, you commute basically. So I remember my son was very big, and he used to ask me each and every time, what did you propose? I remember. So believe it or not, I mean, you learn things from kids, and some of the things that he said to me, I did actually got a chance to talk about. It was giving another, just how I was learning from my mom, I was learning from my parents, how to just keep giving and just give, and just, you got to be generous when it comes to society. I hope that was the sacrifice, as of course leaving your youngsters and having to travel and spending, how many nights every other week. I hope that this is a lesson that I would give to them, that just to keep giving, and just, it's never enough. Ask not what your country will do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's definitely something I'm going to quote, and that's how I really felt. Honestly, that's how I felt, and I still do.
But what are your plans going forward?
So I'm also the vice president of the Sports for All Federation. I'm honored to be in that federation. And, this is where, Princess Rima, our ambassador in the US, was heading before she became ambassador. And now it's headed by Prince Khalid bin Walid bin Talal. And I'm still very much involved with sports throughout the kingdom. It's not just the private initiative, but I still have that, responsibility to keep promoting and keep pushing as much as I can. And we were just in Riyadh a while back, and I participated in the opening game in the Global Goals World Cup, because it is a universal language. That's how we connect with the world, and share beautiful messages of peace, and sending out whatever message through that language of sports. So throughout my 15 years in Jeddah United or Riyadh United, we had tournaments. And these tournaments would have like messages like the no smoking tournament, or the drink milk tournament for kids, or the breast cancer tournament.
Right.
And a lot of people thought we were nonprofit, because they didn't realize that, you can have a win-win situation. And we tried to, use sports for good, whether it was sending good messages or promoting the sports or health benefits, et cetera, et cetera. But we try to also be very much in tune with our identity. And I'm big on that. As a mother of 2 daughters, I think it's very important to not lose touch of, who you are. And I always say a person without a history is a person without a future. And it's very important to look at it in that perspective. So, and that's also very much part of Vision 2030. Yes, it is globalization, yet it's also, national identity. It's and I'm very big on that as well.
Do you want to give us a tour?
I sure do.
I think this would be a perfect time for that.
Okay,
Awesome.
perfect. So, all right, so I will take you on a tour. The girls are, it's live, and I will just show you what the girls are doing right now. We're here at the academy. This is, let me introduce you. Let me
We're at
see
the
if I
academy in Jeddah,
flip-
right?
Correct. Let me see.
Oh, that's a nice facility.
That's well, the flooring is actually imported from California because we tried to get like high technology for the, shock, what do you
Right.
call it?
Absorption.
And
Yeah.
correct. So these are the young girls here training. Unfortunately, they're not playing a game. You would have seen more skills, but yeah.
Well, no, this is really interesting. This is, and what do you do in high summer?
Oh, believe it or not, it's very healthy to play outdoors, and especially now, honestly, post-COVID, it's really. I mean, we were very lucky because, like according to research, 67% or so of you were at higher risk of getting corona if you were in indoor facilities. So we were very lucky, and this is actually exactly one of the reasons why we chose to have an outdoor facility for health reasons. You want the vitamin D, you want the sunlight, you want the fresh air, and then also, it's not just COVID, but before that, you had the bird flu, you had so many different other viruses, and this was a great way for us to feel like we want to always be healthy and safe. So yes, it's hot, it can get hot, but mind you, we do not play obviously until the afternoons.
Right.
So we play like after 5. So it's not like we're playing like broad, like at the mid of the day,
Right.
So that's, and I wanted to introduce you here also to my partner, Basma Al Husseini.
Hello.
So
Hi,
this
Basma.
facility we started
Hi.
5 years ago. And like I said, we have different branches, and we think it's really important to,
Well, Basma,
to,
Basma, you're tall, so you clearly have game, right?
I'm really tall. I'm 176, I guess. Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. So by default, I have to play basketball. But it's a beautiful game. Like you work out every muscle in your body. So it's really good for your health also.
I think it's the best game in the world. It's the best combination of team and individuality.
And you know what? That's what Lina is doing here. She's implementing ethics, sportsmanship, everything. So it's not only about like physical workout. It's also for your for spiritual, for everything.
and I think that, talk about competitive sports, and we all know there's a dark side to it. As hard it is for me to say it, sometimes when you see teams, you can see some hate on the court, but we're really big on trying to promote good sportsmanship.
True.
That honestly would be the difference between like a good academy, when you just don't focus on the win only, like per se, but it's also a lot of other different values with like throughout the sport, or when you teach the sport.
I believe, and this is someone who's played team sports, Lucian's the same way, who's coached all his life. I believe team sports teaches everything you need to know about life. That's my sense. And when we started speaking, Lina, you said, I went out in 2003, and invited my friends out there, and it was just transformative. When you first played, and honestly, that camaraderie that you get with team sports is unlike anything else, and it teaches you so many things. So I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, and agree 100% on why it's important.
Thank you for saying that. I just want to say, we do have actually we're a co-ed academy. So we have a big boys and men's division that not a lot of people, like media, especially here, like to focus on the women's division more. But in reality, we are a both gender academy.
Basma, what's your background?
I studied English literature. I lived in Vancouver for 7 years with my husband. He was studying medical school. I have 4 girls who are also, they're tall, just like me, and they're playing basketball too. What else? I don't know.
Basma's a longtime friend. So we're family friends from a long time. And, Basma's one of those dedicated mothers, with 4 girls. And she, with her beginning of her career, she was just, obviously in Canada for 7 years. And she just was raising her girls. And then she called me one day and she said, Lina, we have a piece of land. Are you interested to have a division here? And I said, of course. And the rest is history.
Because I do believe in Lina. She did a lot in Saudi Arabia where it was really hard to find a place to play basketball. So, and she has passion to do it. And it's not only about, it's a business, but she has passion. Like, it's a beautiful place. It's a happy place where everyone is enjoying each other. So that's why I found it's really special to be partner with such a lady. Like, it's a big name. Lina is a very big name.
Okay,
here.
I'm getting flattered like a lot, you know. Do the editing.
I didn't prepare anything, and you put.
Sorry, I put on this spot. I'm so sorry. It's my bad.
Yeah.
Well, promise me if next time Lucia and I are in Jeddah, we can come by and see the facility.
For sure.
We'd be honored. We'd be honored to have you.
And I want to introduce you to someone else who is also one of the founding players, and now she is an assistant coach. Her name is Tam Sadiq. So she says she's shy, but
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So you're a coach there.
Yeah, I just started coaching like a few months ago.
That's exciting. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
It's a
And a
lot
good
harder.
experience.
It's a lot harder to coach than play, isn't it?
It is, yes, especially when the kids are naughty. Yeah.
So how what's your secret in terms of getting the kids motivated and engaged?
Well, there's no secrets really, but like we try to encourage the girls to watch our games, so they get motivated to do better.
So you're playing. So you're on a team, and are there levels of teams? So there are levels of teams.
Yeah, I'm playing for the advanced team, and we're part of the national league.
Oh, fascinating. So is this age group related?
The age group related? 18 plus.
All right, I got you. So when you talk about the national team, so are you competing in tournaments around in various tournaments?
No, we're in the national league, meaning we're playing against different cities that are in Saudi.
This was the one that was this was the one that has recently started, right?
Yes.
just this year.
It just had we had one season only.
So this is exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years ago you didn't have this opportunity.
No.
That's tremendous. How many teams are in the league?
How many teams? Last year, I think like maybe 12 from different cities. For our city, there was 4.
And last year was a strange year with the pandemic and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So this year will be a little more normal, hopefully. That's really interesting.
I think so. Yeah.
Where do you play your games? In local high schools, arenas?
Stadium. Yeah, stadium, local stadium.
And do you have do fans come in?
Last year we weren't allowed any audience,
Right.
but because of COVID. So hopefully this year they'll imply like some rules and they will allow audience, hopefully.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. Lina, you should be so proud.
I really am. And I just want to say that I remember in 2008, we had a joint program with the WNBA through the State Department. And we had Lynette Woodard come and visit, visit our team in 2008, correct.
Wow.
And she talked about Title IX and the struggles that, women in the US had before Title IX, basically. And it really, and I've always loved to read about the history of women's sports and the history of just women empowerment throughout the world. And I think we are no different. We are a young nation, was united in 1932. So when you look at the time frame, I think we have, and especially after Vision 2030, I don't want to say, I want to say that for me, I look at it as miraculous. We did not have women's sports. We did not have women attending any stadiums. We did not have national teams. We didn't have any leagues. We had almost hardly anything, really. I would say hardly anything. To today, look at leagues, look at, 6 of our girls, this is something I say with pride and a sense of accomplishment. 6 of our girls made it to the national team in 2019 that participated in the GCC tournament in Kuwait. So it feels good that it's crystallizing. It's not just, we're able to reap the fruits basically and taste it, and just this, sense of success. It's not about, as again, it's not the business perspective, but it's just the feeling of what has come out of it. Like I said, every time I see a success story, I feel like it's my own.